All right. So tell me, what is the story with these kids?
Show him the sneakers.
Let me see.
Oh my God, this is sneakers. Bernie, you said Bernie's back outside.
They're more than I would pay. How much these things cost?
Yes, Bernie Sanders there. That's more than I would pay. Very on brand.
What's the most you'd ever spend on a pair of sneakers? Not half, would.
I don't think I'd pay more than $300.
Right.
But I have paid over $200 for running shoes before. So
there you go.
Got some Sauconys.
Oh hell yeah! I mean, a little classic over here.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to the program. I mean, Jesus, I guess I'm we got a lot of fucked up shit to talk about tonight, friends. I mean, seriously. I mean, I was saying to Matt before we got started that I'm not trying to come off as an alarmist, but I am starting to get to the point where, like, how are more people not freaking out about what's going on? I mean, we really are watching on so many aspects of our life and planet at this point, a real system collapse happening before our eyes.
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly where to start. Of course, what's going on in Israel and Palestine, probably a good place. Israel finally officially broke the ceasefire, although even some news outlets were still wondering, like, does this assault where you kill 400 Palestinian women and children, is this the breaking of the ceasefire? One wonders what criteria, if we could establish that beforehand, what accounts for the breaking of the ceasefire.
When it comes down to it, Matt, you know this, like, it's never about what Israel does. It doesn't matter how many bodies are piled up, how many children are ripped from the arms of their mothers. It is about official statements, right? And did Israel say that they did something bad, or did they say, oh, we made an oopsie daisy, and that's why they're waiting to get their marching orders, because they can't report what they see, right? Like, so much of American reporting on Israel right now is not reporting the information that you're receiving and what you're seeing with your own eyes. It's what is the statement from the official killed children army of Israel.
Right. And we're 17 months into this, and it's interesting how the phrase or the term ceasefire has been sort of finagled as like an early demand by people like ourselves, saying, hey, Israel's going to use this as a pretext for slaughter, so we need a ceasefire, which even Anthony Blinken, like, within 24 hours of October 7th, tweeted out and then deleted, saying, I agree with the Turkish diplomat, we need a ceasefire in the region. Then the ceasefire became sort of refined by a lot of Democrats, frankly, saying, oh, we need a ceasefire. Of course, they meant a temporary ceasefire, which is basically like opportunity for the IDF to take some R&R and recuperate before going back and continuing the slaughter again. What was never really on the table, either as pushed by Biden or Trump or by the Israelis, is a permanent ceasefire, because they both, all the parties there, see a violent solution to the populations in Gaza and the West Bank. And so, like, a permanent ceasefire, that's actually not what their plan is.
Oh, yeah, I mean, what could that look like at this point? I mean, Trump has obviously said what he said about kind of turning Gaza into some kind of perverted beach resort for the refuse of the, I don't know, international bourgeoisie to go and spend some money at a Trump casino and hotel. I mean, really disgusting stuff. You have the previous administration who was just willing to look the other way. And we'll talk about this in the post game. But, the opposition party in the United States of America, leader Chuck Schumer, is a literal fanatic on this question. We have some audio that we'll play there. I mean, it is exceptionally dire. I want to ask you, there were some kind of hope that there was going to be an opening when this first ceasefire was declared. I'm curious if you have any kind of thoughts, on those feelings of hope when that happened.
I mean, I never credited them. It was a nice little respite It was nice to see people fed.
Hmm.
But the long term sort of like outlook of this has always been exceedingly grim to me, and I think it's just fascinating how Trump um, sort of re-steered the ship and got people back in line. He had the little moment where all of a sudden he looks strong and he's willing to say, Israel, don't do this. And it's worth, I think, that having happened because it proves an important point, which is that America calls the shots when it wants to here.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I mean, Trump was letting Israel do whatever in the West Bank without saying anything. And that he would really stand up to Netanyahu if Netanyahu wanted to push things further. I think he liked to poke a finger in Biden's eye, a well-deserved one. It probably
Hmm.
made him relish doing it even more. But that's the only thing I think he really got out of it. And once he was able to, reset things and say, like, actually, you know, the amount of people who on the right who were like the anti-war righties saying Biden shouldn't do this in Yemen. I agreed with them then that he shouldn't have
Hmm.
been bombing Yemen. All of a sudden, Trump's doing it, and it's thank you, Daddy. This is what strong leadership
Oh
looks
yeah.
like
Oh
on the
yeah.
international stage. And yeah, it's horrific. I mean, I just want to read what some Spencer Ackerman wrote in Zateo. Americans watching horror. I'll put it up actually. Ackerman's a great writer. People should, if you're not familiar with his writing, you should check it out. Americans watching horror again unfold in Gaza should make no mistake. This is our war, our body count, and it cannot be separated from the authoritarian advance at home that is rapidly choking off our fundamental political freedoms. Late Monday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Israel had consulted with the Trump administration before launching punishing pre-dawn airstrikes that killed more than 400 people, including multiple children. An Israeli official told the Washington Post that the resumption of violence was fully coordinated with Washington. Um, we have Caroline Leavitt here. I mean, the sick thing is how proud of this she is.
Mm.
And it goes back to the thing that like Ilan Pape talks about when he said he almost rather argue with a rabid right-wing Zionist than a liberal Zionist because liberal Zionists act like, oh no, we weren't in touch with BB before this, and
Hmm.
I mean, we gave them a lot of coordinates and stuff, and we're checking out everything for them. But look, they're their own country. What can you do? Whereas you get the MAGA people in there, and they say stuff like this.
Well, the Trump administration and the White House were consulted by the Israelis on their attacks in Gaza tonight. And as President Trump has made it clear, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, all those who seek to terrorize not just Israel, but also the United States of America will see a price to pay. All hell will break loose. And all of the terrorists in the Middle East, again, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iranian-backed terror proxies, and Iran themselves should take President Trump very seriously when he says he is not afraid to stand for law-abiding people. He is not afraid to stand up for the United States.
I'm going to stop it there. Let's just make this very clearly. If
Mm.
America fights a war with Iran, it is not standing up for Americans. It is fighting Israel's battle for Israel.
Mhm. And 100%. It is extremely dangerous rhetoric. It has nothing to do with our interests or cares or future as Americans, right? Iran poses zero threat to us. We, as a country, as a nation, pose a significant threat to Iran because they want to topple the government, because they want to have access to their resources, because Israel doesn't want there to be another state in the region who is saying, "Hey, don't kill as many children." Right now, I also wanted to add that when it comes to Trump and Israel, it is just abundantly clear here that this is somebody who has all of the capacity to tell Israel what to do, as we saw with that ceasefire. Like they got a little tough with them, they had to act, has the capacity to make them do certain things, but instead chooses to do what they do, right? So allowing them to, to break off on the ceasefire, killing, I mean, what, 400 people, I think was the most recent count that I saw. I'm sure higher. Um, not to mention, literally the thousands and thousands that they've killed since the beginning of their mass slaughter of people in Gaza. You look at what's going on with freedom of speech in this country. We're literally on the marching orders of far right foreign organizations, Donald Trump is attacking people residing with green cards in the United States. We saw this other attack on another university official. I can't imagine that they're going to stop there. I can't imagine that they're going to stop there. And the fact of the matter is that's because Donald Trump chooses to follow the orders of this menacing, genocidal, reactionary, uh, I don't even want to call them a country at this point, right? Literally just a death organization that is the state of Israel.
And it's, one thing that's useful for is it shuts up a lot of the never Trump type conservatives that do annoy Trump, even though they're sort of politically feeble. But you shut them up because they all support this stuff.
This is more important to them than anything. And like, I think people really need to wrap their heads around this. This is more important to these politicians, both on the Democratic side and on the Republican side. More important than anything is the support of Israel. That's why, like, when John Fetterman had his stroke, right? He just reverted to factory settings. And he's like, what's the one thing I can remember? Oh, I have to be a psychopath about Israel, right?
Yeah. That's like if in politics, if you're a politician with like the Memento style amnesia,
you're just like, oh shit.
The first thing you do is write like, "Don't get on the wrong side of Israel" on your chest.
It is truly monstrous, and this is something that has always been a kind of key to not just American politics but global politics. And the one thing I tweeted something about this, just the other day. I just wanted to note, what we are seeing right now with these attacks on our own freedom of speech in this country is the realization, right? The appearance
chickens coming home to roost
of a fundamental fact, right? A fundamental fact that Zionism is such an aberration. It is so disgusting. It is so and antithetical to any kind of conception of like democracy, of human rights, of even like a better and more prosperous future, which is why it has always had to rely, one, obviously, on extreme violence in Palestine, right? Killing people, removing them from their land, even doing shit like bulldozing over olive trees. And in this country, because it is such a wicked cancer on the souls, on the heart, on the minds, and on our country, it has had to play this disgusting role in our politics by funding all kinds of politicians, both on the Democratic and the Republican side, to not just, by the way, support Israel, but to make sure that certain kind of groups don't get into power, right? Why does Israel focus so much on like attacking progressives, right? We've seen how a lot of progressives are on Israel, right? Look, there's some who are better than others, but not a great batting average, frankly, right? But that is such a threat that if things got maybe a little bit better in America, right? If the horror show slowed down a little bit of like the poverty, the punishment that people face on a daily basis, they might start asking, hey, why are we supporting this genocidal regime in Israel? And now you're literally seeing it because it has been weakened, because more and more Americans are learning and understanding the negative role that Israel plays on global politics and in our own politics. Now they are literally attempting to silence people because it is such a threat. And you could look at that two ways, right? One, horror, fear, right? I'm worried about it too. I'm sure everybody watching this kind of thing is. But also maybe a little bit of hope that they're lashing out like this because they are feeling their weakness, right? Because more and more people are saying no. And it's going to take a lot more for people to accept what's happening than it has in the past.
Yeah. All of this stuff hasn't been built up for them to just say, oh, well, the polls say we're losing people. It's time to give it up. We've got to get to a Kowalski here in a second, but I just want to point out, I posted this. This is from a book called A Threat from Within, A Century of Jewish Opposition to Zionism. Zionist youth mobilization led to another sharp break, this time with the Pacific self-image of the Jews, whether practicing or non-practicing, and naturally it drew hostile reactions. Albert Einstein was among the Jewish humanists who denounced the Betar youth movement in 1935, describing it as being, quote, as much a danger to our youth as Hitlerism is to the German youth. Let me just go here to a news article from this year in The Guardian. Pro-Israel group says it has deportation list and has sent thousands of names to Trump officials. That is the exact same group, Betar, that Albert Einstein called fascistic. And I will just do a Control F here for Fetterman. And let's see what we show. Oh, there it is. After the election, Glick said he met with lawmakers on Capitol Hill, including the Democratic Senator John Fetterman, aides to the Republican Senators Ted Cruz and James Lankford, all of whom, he said, supported the efforts. So a group that Einstein called fascistic, coordinating with senators in both parties, is where we're at. With that, let's bring in our good friend Kowalski from Nebraska, Arron Kowalski. Thank you for coming back on Left Reckoning, Arron. Oh, we don't have your microphone.
Let's see if we can help you out with that.
Yeah, let's see here. I don't know if I can.
Oh, I don't have that information.
Let's see. Hey, Arron, if we'll take a quick break here, I'll call Arron and we'll try to.
Yeah, just keep us 1 second.
All right, folks, we're going to bring Arron back. Arron, can we hear you?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We sure
Yes,
can.
we can hear you.
All
There
right,
you go.
good.
Thank you so much.
Is it loud enough, or do I need to speak up at all?
It sounds, you sound loud enough. There's a little bit of a hiss, but maybe we can adjust something in audio settings. But otherwise, I think we can maybe make do with this. I'll deal with make the audio sound a little bit better. But it's great to talk to you, Arron.
It's great to talk with you, Arron. Arron, for folks who don't know, is a farmer which we'll be talking about. He's also a former candidate for senator of the great state of Nebraska for the Republican Party, and
Oh yeah.
a big enthusiast of the spirit of John Brown. Arron, thank you so much for coming on the program. I know a lot of the real LR heads know you, but for those who don't, Arron's a really great guy, and we're really happy to have him on the program.
Well, I really appreciate that. I mean, I was actually kind of surprised when I saw you guys wanted to have me on, but then again, the world is ending, so we might as well know where the food's going to be when the lights go out. So
That's it. Like I come to you for, just sort of down home. It reminds me of my upbringing a little bit. And then also the apocalyptic warnings of the future.
oh yeah.
On that front, Kowalski, I got a news clip to share with y'all. This is just how this is being, in the coastal areas, how they're responding to Trump's farmer stuff. I'm curious, how you digest this as we dig into what Trump's doing.
31 Senate Democrats, including Schiff and Alex Padilla, are demanding that the Trump administration reverse its decision on a food aid program. The $1 billion program gave money to schools and food banks to buy fresh food from local farmers. The letter asked the U.S. Department of Agriculture to reinstate the program.
So, cuts, Kowalski. How are these cuts? What do you have to say about them?
So those would not necessarily impact me because our farm doesn't do a lot of food to table. However, to my comrades out there in the Northeast that definitely are getting hit by this, this is very, very stupid because, as I'm sure many people are aware, agricultural goods are inelastic. So when farmers were told, hey, you'll get paid if you produce this, they made plans a year ago to do this. There were contracts made. The schools were depending upon this for their supply chains. So, I mean, like, you're talking about a bunch of wheels that were set in motion, and now we're not even applying the brakes. We just took the road off. Like, we're just hurling off a cliff. These kind of cuts, like, even like their cuts to USAID, like the international stuff, for literally pennies on the dollar, surplus grain got purchased, and we would provide life-saving aid around the world. Of all the things we could be doing with our resources, that was definitely one of the few good ones. And I mean, it served us too, because people actually liked it, when we prevented them from starving. But we could somehow not afford $1 billion for our own people, our own schools, our own kids. And what was it, like in the past week, we just sent another $5 billion in arms sales to Israel, and I don't think they're going to pay us back.
What's your engagement with? Let's talk about some of these agencies. USDA. How do they impact your sort of situation?
Pretty extensively. The agency, there's a sub-agency within the USDA called the Farm Service Agency, the FSA. They're the ones you go to when you need to like register for crop insurance, when you need to give them to get crop insurance to the USDA, you have to provide them with like your production reports. It's one of the reasons why it's a really good deal for us, because they know how much we're producing, roughly where we produced it, and then in exchange, we don't have to lose everything if we get hit with a hailstorm. Basically, private insurance could never fully work on its own with crop insurance. It's just one event's too disastrous. And I mean, you could really be that unfortunate guy that gets hit like 3 years in a row, and there'd be no reason your premium should go up for that. I mean, like, it's not your fault it hailed. So the USDA cuts, I forget if it was 2018 or 19. There was a lengthy government shutdown to where the FSA office actually had closed for a couple weeks. And in the lead up to planting season, that is a crippling blow to like just the bureaucracy, because then they were racing to catch up. People were angry because they're trying to plant. You also can get finance through the USDA. A lot of farmers get operating capital, and getting that through the USDA is really nice because the checks will always clear, and usually the interest payments on it are pretty low. I mean, this is going to create a huge bottleneck, and God only knows the things they're going to like mess up on. Like, Have you guys ever heard of the screw fly?
Tell
Is
us.
that an invasive species or something like that?
It is a bit invasive. So there used to be this thing called a screw fly. It had a parasite that goes along with it, and it would absolutely devastate cattle. It killed a few people, but I mean, before we got this under control, it would cost the US and Mexico about $600 million a year in cattle damages. Thanks to some very smart people, they found out that if you took the screw fly, bombarded it with x-rays, you could create sterile ones. And right now, for $15 million a year, the USDA is flying a plane with sterile flies in it in the Darien Gap in Panama, and it's preventing these things from getting into North America. So for 15 million, we save 600 million. And is that something some idiot is not going to be able to understand when they're cutting programs? Like if I told you, hey, we're spending $15 million in Panama to drop sterilized flies into the jungle, what do you think some punk kid, 19, who's never worked is going to think?
No, I mean this is how they've been getting away with this kind of thing. Is sort of presenting them in the most absurd way possible, or just not understanding what it is that they're messing with. And when it comes to some of these shifts, Kowalski, I'm like, I'm curious if you could help us get this. Like, one thing that I think is notable is that, like, while some of the techniques, some of the things that these agencies are doing are like certainly modern, but like the United States government has been like heavily engaged in American agriculture for like over a century. So like we're not just like going back, to like the 50s. Like we're literally going back to like the 1800s when it comes to sort of pulling back, a lot of these kind of programs, because we don't want there to be these kind of major crises in agriculture, because it obviously certainly hits our economy, but it also like limits our ability to survive.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you really shouldn't be touching things because you don't really understand how the whole system works. Like the disruptions right now to technically messing with demand will not harm production, but like the trade war definitely will, because like I got something to show you guys. Check it out. This is a plate with potash. I just recently, in the last 48 hours, spread about 120 tons of that across the state of Nebraska for the local co-op. That stuff comes from Canada. There's only 3 places you can really get it from, and the other 2 is Russia and Belarus. And there are issues.
Well, we're really friendly.
We're really
friendly with those guys, aren't we?
Oh yeah. So like how we've done things with Canada is like, we don't sell milk to them, they don't sell milk to us. Makes sense, keep those things separate. But in this instance, you have to purchase the fertilizer from them. That gives them a point of leverage. They desperately need our transportation system to get out to the greater world market. It's a decent trade. Why we're doing this, like the only thing I can think of is an intentionally trying to crash the economy. So a few rich actors who have cash can purchase it when it gets the bottom, which is April 2nd. That's when the economy crashes, is April 2nd. So at least we know, like, that's nice. But
we've talked about that. That's my fear too. I mean, I'm hoping something.
Well, it can't be on April Fool's Day because everyone will think it's a joke if it happens on April Fool's Day, as Trump said.
Right, of course.
Just really quick, Quasi. I mean, just I know this might sound like a simple question, but on the consumption side, right? These kind of shifts, particularly if we do experience these kind of tariffs, I can see on a certain level, it's like, oh, maybe this could help certain farmers. Like let's say, for example, like my grocery store here in Texas, like a lot of our produce is Mexican. A lot of it's Texas, but a lot of it's Mexican, right? And I could hear somebody be like, well, this is going to help out Texas farmers. But as I just want you to help people understand like the kind of business side of it, that like, do we have like a chain that's going to be able to, tomatoes just like exploded in price, that we're now going to immediately be able to replace those ones that maybe have been imported from Mexico with local ones in a kind of seamless or even just functional way.
If you started right now, we could replace our tomato demand in about 2 to 3 years if we were like in full war mode. There's a lot of products though, like a lot of citrus fruits, actually trees in general, 5-year time horizon, bare minimum. There's just a biological bottleneck to it. A few years ago, there was a spike in beef prices. That was because 2 years prior to that, we had lost like 250,000 calves to a blizzard. Just like it was an intense blizzard at the end of the season, usually doesn't happen, hit, and we felt the impacts of that for 2 years. Cutting off any type of food imports would be, even if we did decide, okay, we're going to throw every subsidy we have at these farmers so that we can be completely self-sufficient in all of this, where are we getting the labor? Because actually, better than that, where are we getting the educated agronomists? Because you're talking about somebody that needs at least a 2 years associate's degree. And then the labor force, existing farmers today, I know in Nebraska, the average age of the farmer is 59. In Texas, maybe 57, just because you have a larger labor pool, maybe. But I mean, this is why we are so reliant on migrant farm workers for a lot of the food to table products. So immigration has definitely just thrown a wrench into even our own domestic production. So if we wanted to do this all at home, I mean, who's going to pick it? We don't have enough prisoners, and you can't force them to do it. They tried in Georgia. It didn't work. So none of this makes any sense. It's just noise and chaos. I don't know how hard they would actually go with stopping the importation of food, but it's also one of those talking points. Like Trump said in a Truth Social tweet, or whatever they call it, farmers have fun when it's just the domestic market we'll be selling into. And 3 out of
can we
every...
consume? Can we do that? Yeah.
No, we feed 1 billion people. Even if everybody decided to take one for the team and eat 3 times as much as they have now, we would barely break even. So no, that's just, not to mention, you need access to these other markets because we can grow things in North America that is easier to do here that you can't really do elsewhere.
This is, I'm sorry, I didn't message you about this beforehand, but like, can you just sort of help people understand this? Because like, I do think that like sometimes people, both I think certainly like the Trump folks who just sort of think, oh, you can just do whatever, whenever, wherever. And also sometimes people on the left don't realize that like there are certain places and like kind of economies of scale that are just going to be way better at producing foodstuffs than others, right? Like the idea that we would just be doing it all, like if every state had to kind of produce all of its own food, it would be very disastrous for a lot of states.
Yeah. So right now I've been talking with a gentleman who is in the UK who's been working on their farm protests lately. It is imperative that the UK does not open up its imports to American exports because we will absolutely destroy them. So like our Nebraska alone, agricultural land-wise, we have more than the entirety of Great Britain by ourselves. Now, we are the 3rd most productive agricultural state in the country, but Iowa can outproduce us. And Texas is right behind Nebraska, and nobody will ever touch California unless they fall into the ocean, which at this point, they might be better off. But like, we can do all the grain that we need. The United States is also the better place to do like animal agriculture. I think I've mentioned this to you guys before. Animal agriculture is predominantly a consequence of us not having the labor to do enough fruits, vegetables, and nuts because the animals do the labor. But if we don't do it, actually, yes, this was part of the first Trump trade war. The U.S. got hit with trade retaliations from China, which hurt our beef exports. Who picked up the slack? It was Brazil. Who was in charge? At the time, it was Bolsonaro. What did they do? They tore out more of the Amazon rainforest. Why should we sacrifice the rainforest when we have North Dakota? It's already there. It grows grass. The whole length of the state, it's just grass.
100% agree, Kowalski as a North Dakotan.
I mean, we'll set some land aside for the buffalo. We need to bring that back. But actually, even those conservation programs are all getting cut now because what was it? I can't think of the name of it, but there was a environmental programs that were set up through the ACA, or not the ACA, the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. And these farmers were told, if you institute these conservation methods, you will get paid a check. Most of it had to deal with preventing runoff, making sure that habitats were fine. And now you just, those were year-long plans. Like most people had like a 5-10 year time horizon on these. And now they're just gone because they got the program in an executive order, which is technically illegal because Congress passed it. It wasn't something that you can do in an executive order. So now we're just at the mercy of the judges.
So when you make it, like, again, to help people understand this, because I think this is across the board in like business, right? The idea like that Trump's making with like some of these tariffs, some of these policies, like, oh, well, they're going to reshore business. Oh, all these people are going to come back. But I know, for example, like any kind of commodity production, you're not really going to want to reshore production to America unless you're kind of certain that this is like the rules of the road forever. And Trump sort of jumping on and off of these tariffs doesn't really imply that this is going to be the rules forever. But just in your world, right, in agriculture, could you help people kind of understand like those long-term planning that goes into that kind of work that, right, is getting disrupted, one, maybe by potentially tariffs, but two, by like programs that were supposed to encourage this kind of activity being gutted that you might have already invested or started engaging in?
So something you can do here, and you have to go through the FSA office, Farm Service Agency, you can get paid to do things like cover cropping. What do you need to do to cover crop? You have to have a way to spread the seed, so you have to have the equipment. You have to have a supplier for that seed. Somebody has to grow that in order for you to have the seeds to plant it. There's a logistical supply chain here. Now, where is a good place to put it? When is not a good place to put it? How will it react on some soils? How will it not react on other soils? All of this stuff, you just have to learn through trial and error. That's like why losing a farmer in their 50s is so devastating, because it's like they had so much knowledge that's just gone. So like for us, we do a minimal till program because we've learned using brute force that if you tear up soil that is as sandy as ours, it will blow in the wind. It will not be as fertile. You don't get the same type of microbial activity. So you have to have special equipment to do that. You have to have a minimal till disc. You have to have strip till machines. You have to have a way to water these. A pivot, center pivot irrigation systems, those do not pay for themselves until about a decade out. And, when you make these plans, you have to expect that these payments will clear. One thing Nebraska did is we had at a state level a program where the state would pay for half of a pivot. You put up the cash for the other half. And the state liked this for two reasons. One, it meant you weren't going to be using as much electricity and wasting as much water, which is good for everybody. Two, the price of the land goes up. So in the long run, your taxes will end up paying them back anyway. So everybody wins. And it's also a lot less stress on our end of things. But, that's like a multi-year process minimum, if not a decade time horizon. So immediate,
this is devastating.
You cannot. No, this is like a tech-brained like view on how you do things. And I mean, how the tech always does things is, move fast and break things. Okay, great plan. I would rather drive a Ford that's been tested as opposed to a Tesla that's been tested on a computer. I'm just
Or also, I'm sorry. Like, there's a big difference between fucking running like a social media company, even, right, and like our food system. Right? Oh yeah, it sucks. Facebook is down, or like people don't want to use the ads because they're not exciting enough anymore. Right? It's very different than us like not being able to go to the grocery store and get some food. Yeah, what's up here?
Here's a counterpoint. Here's our president.
Purchases, and we were doing great, but Biden did not enforce it, and it hurt our farmers. But our farmers are going to have a field day right now. So to our farmers, have a lot of fun. I love you too. I love you.
So what are you complaining about, Arron?
If this is him loving us, I want to know what happens when he hates you. Good Lord.
I'm curious, I want to ask you about NOAA and some of this climate change stuff too, but you are younger than the average farmer, but I'm curious. You're sort of, and we also, I want to ask you about the run for office. I'm
Mm.
curious, like, what your early experiences were realizing, like, oh, as a farmer, I need to pay attention to this politics stuff.
It was when I switched my major from civil engineering to agribusiness. And day one, my professor said, "Remember, class, farmers are price takers. You buy at you buy at retail, you sell at wholesale, you pay shipping both ways, just like Kennedy said. Um, you have no power in bargaining for cheaper input costs. You have no power to say what you will be selling your products for. You are just at the mercy of the market, which means we are at the mercy of politicians. So if we do not have a proper political base, Monsanto will get us on one end and JBS will get us on the other.
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
if you're not politically engaged, eventually we would just have become serfs again if we chose to stay, or we'd leave. It becomes a corporate operation, and then you just have random laborers who don't care about any type of conservation, don't care about the local community, probably. Or they try to automate this, and then, solar flare, and we don't have anybody to run any of the equipment. And you might think that's funny, but no, last year we literally had a solar flare that knocked out all of our GPS systems.
Jesus Christ.
For 24 hours, nobody was able to plant.
Wow. Wow.
Like, you have to have people who know what they're doing. Technically, I guess I was capable of planting, but I'm a millennial who remembers how to steer things and the way some of our fields are. But you got to be able to adapt on the fly, and you're not going to get that from somebody who's just a regular laborer. A farmer is a tradesman by definition.
Mm.
That's why when we kept leaving the farm, you guys didn't have to pay for the education in the major cities to get all of these people, and then you suck the rural areas dry. Nice going. Then NAFTA sucked Mexico's rural population dry.
Mm.
And then when that was done, we sucked Central America's rural population dry. Yeah, we're going to have to do a lot of education for the trades.
I don't want to hold you too long, but I'm curious. Just tell people who weren't familiar. You tried to run in a Republican primary for office.
Yeah, for me, I view Nebraska as kind of like, if you're not in the Republican team, you can't really do anything. Where I live is a completely red area. So if I want to do anything locally, like influence a primary, join the only team there is, because the Democrats have no base at all out here. We were abandoned for whatever reason. So I wanted to run against Deb Fisher because, frankly, she has been awful for agriculture. Don't really have a chance of raising anywhere close to the amount of money she has, because she, is a huge corporate, sellout essentially. She's more for meatpacking plants than ranchers. And actually, I had better responses from ranchers than I did farmers on that, just because they do not like her, even though she ostensibly should be their voice. She's just not. So that, and she was unopposed, and there was nothing I could run for locally. So I thought, at the very least, make more of a name for myself, maybe be able to get some issues through. But I got more votes statewide than Nikki Haley, so that was cool.
Yeah, no, your numbers were pretty
Great
impressive.
job.
I'm serious. It was not, they had to get your photograph and put it up there. I think that it's a very interesting idea and worth pursuing in a lot of places. What is the point in doing the same thing on the Democratic line and getting no real response or votes?
Exactly. By being a Republican, I can have at least some say in the local politics of it. You don't immediately get discounted. It's
Do you
pick your
think
battles.
Do you think the current stuff could make that any more viable? Like, if Trump does, crash rural community economies.
I think broadly, if you just have a good populist message, you can go far right now.
Mm.
I guess this is like the first time I'll announce this publicly, but I am very much considering running for state senate next year.
Hell yeah.
Hell
And
yeah.
it predominantly be around rent control, apartment rent control for the cities, and then farmland rent control and pasture rent control in the rural areas. One of those things to try to find a common footing for rural and urban people. And actually, this year, Nebraska finally breached the 2 million mark, and we are almost half urban, from my understanding. So there's finally millions of us. It's wonderful. But cost of living is getting pretty high in Omaha. Omaha is a pretty fast growing area. Same with Lincoln. So, you could get some decent support there. And, historically, there used to be a pretty good working relationship between rural Republicans and Democrats who are predominantly in the cities, because it was always like a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split. Rural Republicans, urban Republicans, Democrats, that was your split. And, the rural Republicans, like, I know it's the case for you guys in Texas, same here. They do not want to have charter schools.
Yeah.
You can't make those numbers work. You'll just destroy the local community. So, I mean, it's non-viable. You try to explain that to the guys who live in Omaha, and they're just like, well, then let's just do it here. And it's like, no, stop it. You're wrong. So, I still think maybe on a state level you get these bonds. National level, it probably wouldn't work just because it's too much of a blood sports event there. But I mean, where you live, I think might be a little more doable, especially in a state that's not quite as big population wise. Nebraska, is huge, but not with people.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I mean, we definitely will have you back anytime you want our bully pulpit for that effort. Kowalski, is there anything else you want to get out there before we let you go?
I think maybe just because of how important it is, but the NOAA stuff.
Yes.
So today I was able to go spread dry. You cannot spread dry when it is over 25 miles an hour, the wind blowing. Because of how we get our weather information, I knew I could run yesterday and today. I did 12 hours doing that. Tomorrow, it's going to be blowing 60 miles an hour. I will not be planning on spreading dry. That would be very dumb and would break a lot of laws. So this is all free to me. I just get to have access to it because it was paid for by our tax dollars. And remember this, when it gets bought by AccuWeather, all of the facilities will be purchased at a discount, pennies on the dollar. Your tax dollars built the satellites. They built all of the stations that, measure everything. We already paid for it. And now it's going to be sold at a discount to a private venture so they can just charge us rent to use the service we already built. Imagine having to pay a toll road that was built by public dollars. It would be stupid. And there's not going to even be accountability to it. There's no part about this. It's just privatizing our public services that have always worked. This is going to happen to a lot of other things, and it's going to be brutal. But
Kowalski, I mean, look, you say that, but when you want to know about the weather or something, why don't you just do what Adam Carolla says? I have a thought. How about everyone take care of themselves and their families and not rely on the government?
These guys are so fucking.
We had a low-grade dust bowl that blew all the way from Oklahoma to Texas last week. There were over 300 houses lost in Oklahoma alone. They barely got a warning, and we're supposed to expect a private company to do anything? It's crazy. Look, I don't think cutting essential government services as the climate is collapsing is a great plan. It's we kind of need to have all the king's men on the line for this one. It's kind of do or die.
Yeah.
So
well, Arron Kowalski, Arron, any social media you want to direct people toward?
I've got a YouTube channel called Prairie Fire. I haven't posted anything on it, I think, in like a year. I'm hoping to change that coming up. And then I'll keep you guys posted on what my political shenanigans will be. But let's just keep that spirit of John Brown alive, shall we?
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Hear, hear. Yep. Thanks so much, Arron.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
that was great. And yeah, no, people should definitely be keeping up with that. I'm really looking forward to seeing what might happen in the future. I always tell folks about that run. I mean, just for people who might not know the official numbers here, let me pull them up for folks. Thank you again, Kowalski. Let me just pull these numbers up for people from the
he made a good
primary.
effort.
You know, I mean, it's not nothing. So Arron Kowalski, you see him right there. 44,000 votes, 20%.
44,000 people in fucking Nebraska turned out to vote for him. That's awesome.
For a good guy. So really
In
looking
a Republican
forward.
primary.
It's amazing. It's really awesome.
awesome.
So I think, getting a lot more of that energy and just being creative. I mean, this is something that's like, one thing, like talking about like some of like the rural revolutions that like I'm writing about, like in Texas, they did kind of sometimes debate what party was worth fusing with, right? On either side of it. I don't want to get like bogged down in it, but like, why not? Is all that I'm saying. Why not? If you can run in a Democrat primary and it helps get radicals and socialists elected, that works. And if it works on the other party, that's great. And if it works as a third party or independent, that's great too. I just want to get more good people into positions of power, and I think that's
people that know how to turn out votes. Yeah. We need people that know how to get votes from people. And North Dakota History Nonpartisan League. Originally, they had more success on the Republican side until eventually getting more success on the Democratic side. Now, of course, the voting situation, the laws are slightly different than they were because they didn't want to allow that again. But that's the thing is like everyone theorizes about this stuff. And that's important to do, of course. But like, I want to see more doing. And that's what I've always liked about Kowalski. You said like, fine, let's see what we can do. And it turns out a lot of psychos in the Republican Party, as Kowalski's reports from that time period have shown. But there's also people willing to turn out and vote for a guy like him over an establishment Republican. And that's fascinating to me.
Why not? Well, I guess we can talk about Republicans a little bit more before we go over the post game, folks. Where we'll talk about Mr. Chuck Schumer, who is people.
Yeah, I was gonna say Schumer, is he the Republican? I wish just leave the party.
He might, maybe he will. He's Chuck Schumer is a fanatic, and we have some a recent interview of his where he just says some stuff that is just would be right at home. Not only, by the way, in the Republican Party, but maybe in the John Birch Society. Right. So, just remember that is the person who is leading the opposition party as Trump is literally waging war on our ability to defeat ourselves, not to mention the Constitution and the people of Gaza. But Matt, I mean, people might know this already. We have had our first arrest in the state of Texas, our first abortion arrest in the state of Texas, which is an extremely worrying event for many, many reasons. It's something that we know have been coming. I want to get into some of the reasons why it might be happening right now. But this is from the Texas Tribune here. Texas's first abortion arrest stemmed from a month-long attorney general investigation. 2 people have been arrested and charged with performing illegal abortions at a Houston area health clinic. The first criminal charges brought under the state's near total abortion ban. Maria Margarita Rojas, certified nurse midwife, and Jose Ley and her employee were charged with illegal performance of an abortion, as well as practicing medicine without a license. Now, that's an important thing to note here. What about that charge that we can get into maybe a little bit more in depth in a second. But this is something that is very worrying, obviously. It's something that we've been kind of, knowing was probably going to come around sooner or later. We can talk about some of the specifics of this case, at least some of the allegations that they've made. But this is a direct, assault on our basic rights to healthcare in this state. It's also extremely cynical, as we'll get into, because the fact of the matter about this, and I just want to note this at the top, the fact that this is happening right now and the way that it's happening right now is not even about like Ken Paxton and these guys like deep moral beliefs, right? I would think that was bad if it was driven by this, but it's even more sickening than just that. They are trying to utilize this as a political springboard. And I just want people to note this as we start to sort of go through some of the facts here. Because first and foremost, the Attorney General of the state of Texas does not have the ability to initiate these kind of charges, right? This is not something that is in their power. So this is something that came out of Waller County in Texas, where the district attorney there had been sort of watching this. And I don't have any information about this. This is just my hunch, right? Probably some level, maybe coordination here, right? Saying we need to get something. But he sort of pushed forward these charges and then said, "Oh, we'll let the Ken Paxton take over again," because our attorney general system in the state of Texas, I don't know how it operates in other states, if it's the same thing. They don't have the ability to sort of pursue these kind of cases, right? Probably for the exact reason that we're all kind of noting here, is that they don't want them to utilize these for political theater, for political gain. And yet that is exactly what is happening here. I do. I mean, I can talk a little bit about the case here. So Maria Margarita Rojas, she's from Peru, I believe. She's a midwife. They called some of the other members of the organization who have all said that they were shocked and they didn't believe that she would do this. Sort of denying it there. She's been operating in the state of Texas, practicing medicine in the state of Texas, or providing healthcare to people in the state of Texas since 2018. So she's been around for a while. She's helped a lot of mothers have children, right? She's a fairly successful midwife. Go ahead, Matt.
And I just want to say, like, and I appreciate, people saying abortion is medicine.
Yeah.
Any point in history, women like this exist. Abortion is part of their skill set and services they can provide to women.
Well, this is the note here, Matt, that I was going to get to here, is because one of the charges here, in addition to the abortion, is practicing medicine without a license. And what does that mean? Well, what it seems like it means, what it seems like the allegation is that her performing abortions, if she did, right, was practicing medicine without a license, right? Which again, I mean, literally just going to what you're saying is like, oh no, so you do recognize that this is healthcare, right? If you want to cynically use it to attack this person.
Right. They don't they care about that consistency.
Yeah. So she was first arrested on March 6th and charged with practicing medicine without a license. She was again arrested on Monday, yesterday, and charged with practicing medicine without a license and performing illegal abortions. And somebody else was also arrested on March 8th and charged with conspiracy to practice medicine without a license. Now, it seems like they've been investigating her for months. As we already sort of noted, it was given over from the district attorney to Ken Paxton, who is certainly, again, utilizing this for political gain. This is something that we've been worried about. It's kind of frightening that they've played political football with this issue so long. I'm talking about the Democratic Party here. That this is happening. And I mean, I think some people are shocked and are upset about it, but I mean, most people have been fairly resigned. I have to admit, I've been a little bit shocked to see this is not sort of rising to the top of a major issue for a lot of people who, have been talking about this for a long time. I mean, this is literally the fight that we all had said that we were in together. And now we're seeing this. I mean, obviously there's been reporting on it, but I'm not seeing this yet be a national issue in the way that it should be when you're seeing basic healthcare being denied people, and now people literally potentially, facing severe criminal charges for this.
Yeah, it says here, according to Jezebel, $10,000 for the first bond, and then they paid that
She's like $700,000 now.
Now it's $500 for the illegal abortion charge and $200 for the medical license charge. And let's be clear, like those regulations or whatever, it's so ironic. That's why these people don't give a fuck about any of the words they say to get what they want, because this is exactly the use of government regulations to try to fuck people. And it's like the sort of thing where it's like, you can't do an abortion if your hallway isn't this wide. You can wheel carts in. You can't do this or that.
I was going to note that. I mean, that was literally in the Texas case, right? You see like the amount of things that are like inadequate in this state when it comes to like public safety, right? Don't need to remind people about something like Uvalde. And yet, yeah, we're gonna be kind of sticklers about trying to come up with ways, to limit access to this medical procedure. And again, that was because they were under a regime of Roe v. Wade. The second that went away, the whole thing went away really quick. And remember, for years and years and years, they said, "Oh, we're not interested in doing this. We're not interested in calling this back." I mean, it went really fast here. Now, we'll be certainly covering this and keeping up with this. I wanted to note some of like the political aspects here, because they're fairly important. Let me just see how the best way that I can pull this up for you.
I mean,
Apologies.
Democrats running for state office in Texas should be talking about anyone getting that is an immediate pardon if they get the governorship. I mean, not however that's possible that is in Texas.
No, I mean 100%. I mean, this is the kind of basic stuff that people should be up in arms about. They're also basically, a lot of the focus right now is on this attempt to privatize our school system here in the state of Texas. I want to talk a little bit about the politics here of it, because I noted earlier the fact of the matter that this is 100% a political trial, right? So Ken Paxton announces this just the other day. In this announcement, he noted the Attorney General. This is what the headline said, March 18th, and this was the first person to break it. Right, might have been some whispers, but this was the first kind of big splash here. Attorney General Ken Paxton announces additional arrests in illegal abortion and unlicensed medical practice investigation. Right, so already Ken Paxton is the star of the show. Actually, apologies. That is yesterday's. Let me get the first one. Here we go. So Ken Paxton already is inserting himself in the middle of the story here. Attorney General Ken Paxton announces arrest of Houston area abortionists and crackdowns on clinics providing illegal abortions. Again, outside of his purview, right? He is taking over this case because the district attorney in Waller County acquiesced to him, right? Now, Ken Paxton, though, we just heard, was literally, getting folks, putting people in cuffs, pulling them in jail. All right. That's what he was doing. He was really busy yesterday doing that, wasn't he, Matt? No, this is fucking Ken Paxton in Washington, D.C. With Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter, and a little freak. So that's what Ken Paxton was up to yesterday. Right. And Ken Paxton is certainly, I think, setting himself up for a run to take on John Cornyn in the upcoming Texas Senate election. This is why he's engaging in this. And he has decided that if he doesn't have under his belt abortion arrests, people in the Republican Party, right, which is effectively the only demographic that has influence over our government at this point, because the Democrats have been asleep at the wheel for 30 years. We'll say, hey, why haven't you started arresting people? You guys wrote all these hard laws about and sort of told stories about what you would do to doctors and to women. And that's why he's doing this right now, is to shore up his Senate campaign. It's not an accident that literally, as this is happening, Matt, I want to note, as this is happening, Ken Paxton is doing an interview with Punchbowl News, setting himself up, talking about how he would be able to defeat John Cornyn, why John Cornyn's time is up, and why it might be his time, right? So he's getting himself in the news and literally is ruining this person's life for the alleged crime of providing healthcare to someone.
The reaction to Me Too, which is part of this, is absolutely wild. Here's a story from January of this year. ESPN. A woman who accused Conor McGregor of sexually assaulting her after an NBA Finals game in 2023 has filed a lawsuit against the former UFC star. Like, that you would be seen in a photo op with a guy like that is so fucking gross. And in the broader context of the abortion shit, which is an assault on women's freedom, particularly young women's, because that just numerically is who gets the most abortion care. It's so fucking disgusting, man.
Yeah, it is tremendously disgusting. And remember, Ken Paxton is somebody who's a criminal. He's somebody who has, embarrassed the state of Texas regularly and utilizes our public goods and services to help out his friends. People don't remember, he literally was turning our state attorney general's office, right, into a personal legal shop for Nate Paul, disgraced Austin area real estate developer. He had, a pretty illustrious affair with a woman. He's taking Ubers all across the state capitol underneath the pseudonym David P. When he got in trouble with the FBI for his financial dealings and started cleaning a house, he ended up hiring the son of the son of a major donor who was an ice cream magnate, and hired them to work in the Texas Attorney General office. Once it was exposed that, hey, why is this random guy who has no real legal experience or reason to be in there receiving $100,000 plus a year salary from the public? They let him go. I mean, this guy is as cynical as they come. He is as cynical as they come, which is why I do not put it past them to be pursuing this case solely to sort of meet a kind of calendar, a rhythm for what he thinks is going to be the best position for him to run his Senate campaign. Because it sure as hell isn't about the interests of Texans. And maybe I'll end on this, is just reminding folks of one of the things that is so worrying about the abortion laws in the state of Texas is, one, how vague they are. People have heard the stories, for example, of Kate Cox, right? The state won't release their investigations into how much maternal morbidity rates have risen since they have passed these extreme abortion bans in the state of Texas. Doctors are afraid to provide health care lest they potentially get sued. They get into trouble because it's unclear what the law even bans. Now, if you're just saying, "Oh, David's just a liberal," he's just coming with top. The fucking state Senate in Texas, SB 31, you can go and look it up right now. Proposed law tries to define what isn't legal because it's not clear. They passed this years ago, which means for years, doctors, healthcare providers have been in limbo because, again, the Republicans in power have no interest in like the effects of these bills, have no interest in what it's going to achieve. They want the headline, "We're strong on abortion. We're strong on these kind of conservative values," which is why, which goes in with what we're seeing right now. And remember, this isn't about serving the interests of Texans, right? I'm not just in a position where, I'm just an angry person in the minority. This is literally from April 2024. And you can look throughout the state's history, look at all the polling on this kind of thing. The numbers and the story about what Texans believe when it comes to abortion are so different from what our law is. Share in support of legal access to abortion by circumstance. This is from the Texas Politics Project. 86% believe that abortion should be allowed if the woman's health is seriously endangered, right? That is something that our extreme abortion ban technically implies, but when is it in danger? When are they allowed to do that? That's not clear. That's why we're seeing all these kind of medical crises in the state of Texas. Next one, which is not allowed in the state of Texas, the woman becomes pregnant as a result of rape. That is something that is happening, documented across the state right now. People are being raped and they are being forced by the state of Texas to give birth to their rapist child. 82% of Texans think that is wrong, and yet that is the law of the land. 78% of Texans believe that a woman should be able to get an abortion as a result of incest, right? 75% say if there's a strong percentage of a serious birth defect, right? 59% of Texans believe, which is effectively, in my opinion, this is elective. The family has a very low income and cannot afford more children. 55% believe an abortion should be legal if the woman is not married and does not want to marry. 55% believe that the woman is married and does not want any more children. 55% of Texans think that abortion should be available if a woman is married and does not want any more children. Now, there's debates about what week people are comfortable with that procedure being done. But there is no doubt that the law of the land in Texas that we are now seeing somebody being arrested for, facing severe legal consequences for, this law is not reflective of the interests or the desires of people in the state of Texas, right? Nor is all the deaths that are now happening because they have created this fucked up, stupid, half-assed law that they didn't even think it through, that literally years later, we got to revise it now. Right? It is insane. It is disgusting. It is embarrassing for this state to be governed by these kind of people. who have no care about your interests as a Texan, right? And literally are utilizing the powers of the state to attack people, to ruin people's lives so that they can set up for their political career. I mean, think about that for a second. Really think about that for a second. The consequences to this person's life so that Ken Paxton can get a headline that he can read to Conor McGregor or whatever over steak dinner in Washington, D.C. on K Street.
Yeah, and the definite, and it's crazy that shows what the state of the democracy is, that polling can exist, and he can also see that as an avenue toward political power. But women don't maybe not need to hear this as much as men, but the was it dilation and curettage, DNC procedure, is part of, say, miscarriage treatment. And that's why you see these, you've seen cases where this treatment has been delayed or often like to severe health consequences because doctors aren't sure if this, and I know somebody who years ago was, when we were younger, was a pro-life person, had the misfortune of finding out what a DNC was, and now understands that you cannot put Republican lawyers and pro-life activist groups in between doctors and these type of procedures. It's fucking medieval.
No, I mean, it's not how you do healthcare. It's not how you do anything. Yep. And, the fact of the matter is, though, and I hate to say it, but the strategy of play dead, play possum, this leads to, that kind of strategy, that kind of lack of courage, lack of confidence leads to this. Not just in this cycle, over the decades. There's always been, it's going to get bad enough and the Democrats are just going to sail into power. It's getting worse. The Republicans are getting more powerful, getting more votes in this state.
They were never supposed to be able to do Roe versus Wade because it would lead to the Democrats winning all these elections. And the Democrats' actual benefit for Roe v. Wade electorally was overperforming slightly in midterms that were supposed to swing to the GOP, and then losing the next election because they were complacent.
And, we'll take this energy in the post game, but people got really too fucking confident over that shit. That was absurd. When they did well in that midterm, people were like, politics is over. Politics is over. We've been given the gift. And turns out you were wrong. And now we are facing the severe consequences of that. Unless you had something you want to pull up.
I'm trying to find the Adam Gentleson tweet. Adam Gentleson was a staffer for John Fetterman who literally tweeted out before the election. Shoot, I'm not going to.
Well, it's great because
here it is. I got it.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. So this is a great tweet from somebody we hate. Adam Gentleson, prediction: there has not been a rollback of rights on the scale of Dobbs in the post-war era, and the election results will reflect this.
Yeah, sit on your ass. God has given you
4th.
God has given you victory, sir. I mean, really, these people are
they're going to get us killed.
They are dangerous. They are
killing democracy.
They are getting people killed. Well, folks, you'll get more of that. We're going to talk about a major villain of literally somebody who thinks it's good when certain people are killed. We're going to be talking about the minority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, amongst other things, as well as taking your questions. You get access to that at patreon.com/leftreckoning. Look, you're not going to get it anywhere else. You're not going to get these deep dives behind the news as we just did. You're not going to get Farm Report from a real farmer and an awesome believer in the spirit of John Brown. All that and more over at patreon.com/leftreckoning. Come and hang out with us in the post game. We'll be there very soon.
Peace out.